My name is Philip Holt, and I am co-founder and CEO of Split, an advanced data company here in Orlando, and I'm vice chair of Project DTO, the mayor's appointed task force to develop a 10-year roadmap for our city. This group came together, 75 people, and generated a passion piece, really communicating their love for our city and their belief in our future. And it's my honor to present the summary of their findings. You could travel anywhere on the planet and tell someone that you're from Orlando and they know exactly where you live. And perhaps that's because this is the greatest city in the world in which to vacation. But now, importantly, it's time to make Orlando the greatest city in which to live. This is really the heart of Project DTO. It starts by recognizing that 10 years ago, the mayor appointed another task force, and they began the work of building infrastructure in our city. The venues came out of that task force, along with a lot of downtown residents and retail. But now is our time. Orlando is on the rise, and people are starting to take notice. Sometimes when you're in the midst of it, it's hard to recognize your own ascendancy. But Orlando is definitely one of the greatest cities in the U.S. We need to recognize that this process will take time. These kinds of urban planning, urban building initiatives take decades, but it begins with a vision. And the vision for DTO encompasses these 10 categories that emerged as the prevailing themes across all of the committees as they dug into their work. Let's take a deep dive into this. It begins with making Orlando an awesome outdoor city. We're blessed with amazing weather and a beautiful environment. It's time to make Orlando an awesome place to be outdoors. Chicago figured out from New York that if you want to be a world-class city, you need to have a world-class park. When you look at this image, just consider land acquisition, commitment to vision, the time it takes to acquire that kind of land. Those little brown spots on that image, those are baseball fields. This is epic in its size and scale and impact to a city. As we look at Orlando, the downtown area has 3.9% open space and green space. When we benchmark ourselves against other cities of our size and our aspiration, on average, they're 12% open spaces. So we have a long ways to go. The way that we think about open spaces is that this needs to be the next major venue. And it begins with creating a well-defined network of trails and connectivity to the open space in our community, unstructured recreation, lighting, fantastic art. The whole city needs to be transformed into a series of open spaces. And it begins with the jewel of our city, Lake Eola. Lake Eola 2.0 is a comprehensive set of needs around how we can enhance and extend the park. Definitely, we want to find ways to activate and program more activity here. We want to look for iconic gateways into the park, and we want to certainly look at redesigning the amphitheater, including back of house and better acoustics. This is a Google Street View image of Washington Avenue, the gateway onto Lake Eola. If you're a business traveler and you're walking down Orange Avenue, you would have no idea that there's a lake just 2 blocks to your east. If you're driving on 408 or I-4, you can't see the lake either. We need to rethink the entrance into our lake, into this jewel that we have in our city, and better connect Lake Eola to our downtown core. Magnolia Avenue offers a great opportunity to turn a deserted street into a pedestrian and transit-driven avenue. The model here is the Rose Kennedy Greenway in Boston, rather than a retail-centric space like the 3rd Street Promenade in Santa Monica. The Ultimate I-4 project is a comprehensive 5 to 7 year plan to expand I-4 through the heart of Orlando. And this represents a fantastic opportunity for us to capture the space underneath the highway. Every committee in DTO is excited about what we could do with what we're calling the Bridge District. But certainly the most obvious thing is extending a green spine all the way along I-4 to create access for green space, for public art, for better lighting, and connectivity from the west and east side of the city. Orlando has so many fantastic lakes, and yet right in our downtown, the lakes aren't a key part of our recreation. Other than a few swan boats out in the middle of Eola, we want to look at bringing back swimming beach at Lake Ivanhoe, expanding the trail system around the lake, and creating an iconic entrance on the north side of town from Lake Ivanhoe. When was the last time you saw kids downtown? Recreational sports, being downtown is a great opportunity to provide diversity of activity, encourage families to come downtown, and as well as adult leagues in the evenings. And we should recognize that all forms of sports aren't necessarily played on grass. Skateboarding is not a crime, and it should be encouraged in our city. In cities like Copenhagen and San Francisco, they have a general philosophy that begins with pedestrians first, then thinks about transit, then thinks about biking, and lastly thinks about cars. 100 years ago, everybody in the world built cities for people. In the last 100 years, we've been building cities for cars. It's time that we put people first as we plan the future of Orlando. I ride my bike from Winter Park to downtown Orlando to commute at least 3 days a week. But it's difficult to find the best routes. We definitely need to look at connecting our great neighborhoods and Main Street districts to our downtown core through a system, a network of urban bike trails. And although this is another shot of biking, this is really a concept about complete streets, which includes access for automobiles, space protected lanes for biking, a nice wide sidewalk for pedestrians, and lots of shade. And speaking of shade, this is an image from Indianapolis. Why in the world should Indianapolis be better at shade than Orlando? We suck at shade and we should lead the world. The second major theme coming out of Project DTO was highly connected neighborhoods and districts. This is a picture of the Jack Kerouac house in College Park. We have fantastic neighborhoods all around our city. We definitely want to connect the vibrancies of those neighborhoods to our downtown core. It begins with looking at how do we connect our great neighborhoods and Main Street districts that have been so successful to our downtown core through a system of urban trails, through advanced transit, expanding Sunrail, better wayfinding, and iconic neighborhood entrances. Irrespective of the boundaries of the CRA, we should look at defining downtown from hospital to hospital, from the Health Village to Orlando Regional. The amount of innovation that comes out of hospitals, and you couple that with the Creative Village and UCF potentially moving downtown, creates an amazing opportunity to capture innovation in the heart of our city. Public transit should be exceedingly charming or incredibly modern. Buses just don't cut it. Our neighborhoods all have distinctive character that should be announced as we arrive into each part of our city. I've lived here since 2005, and I only recently figured out where the Milk District was. You know, that's a shame. We should, every time we roll through a different part of our city, we should discover the unique character that makes up each of our neighborhoods and districts. So as we look at wayfinding, there's both traditional wayfinding, and then there's some guerrilla tactics, sort of tactical urbanism, that's been used to promote walkability. In this example, this is Raleigh, North Carolina, where a citizen just decided to hang some signs around the city to promote different parts of the town and how far or close it was to walk. We should be thinking about different ways of communicating, whether you're in a car and looking for a parking spot downtown, or you're on foot and you're trying to find your way over to Yola. And there's a lot of things that we can do to make parking easier. I think there's lots of parking downtown, both public and private, that people just don't know how to use. And so whether it's wayfinding, just making parking more visible from the street, providing a map. The map here on this slide, I found from some small town in Washington State. I just Googled like great parking, and that's what I found. Orlando, it's difficult to find a parking map in our city, and it's just the city parking garages. It doesn't include public lots. History builds roots. More than 50% of our community was born someplace else and calls a different place home. The more that they discover the natural history that exists here in town, the quicker it is that they're going to find a connection to their location and take pride in the place that they live in. Does anyone know where this picture is from? 32 Pershing Place? This is 1 block west of Westmoreland and 1 block north of South Street, right in the heart of Paramore. There's beauty in all of our neighborhoods that needs to be strengthened and supported and protected. The Paramore Comprehensive Neighborhood Plan is a parallel project, separately funded, to look at the needs of the Paramore community. That project's been pursued with respect and with love, and we embrace and support their conclusions and findings. Third topic, downtown Orlando needs to be the best place in the state to get an education. This is an image of Georgia Tech in downtown Atlanta, one of the best technical universities in the eastern U.S. Downtown Orlando needs to have a very strong educational presence. I had the pleasure of hearing Dr. Gates present to a group of educators a couple years ago, and this quote really stuck with me as a just profound insight into how we prioritize our spending and commitment to education. Dr. Gates is one of the world's foremost authorities in astrophysics, theoretical physics, has a PhD from MIT, and is a graduate of Jones High School. I love this photograph. This is a picture of Orlando High School circa 1927. Of course, now it's home to Howard Middle School. But the best education should be right downtown. If we want to attract more residents to downtown Orlando, they are first going to think about what's the quality of the public schools in the area they're considering moving to. If we don't have great schools downtown, we're not attracting people that care about education. We can't assume that downtown UCF is going to happen. This is something that needs to be supported and encouraged by Project DTO and by the community at large. This is incredibly transformative to our city. And the community school in Paramore is just as important. This would be the first time that a school has been built in the Paramore neighborhood in 40 years. And it's a community center with a school in it. It'll be open from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. at night. And it'll do a lot more than just educate the kids in that neighborhood. It'll really be a transformative, renewing element for the entire community. What constitutes a great education also needs to include the arts. This is an example of a boarding school for the arts in Greenville, South Carolina. South Carolina also has a boarding school for mathematics and science as well. South Carolina is kicking our ass in education. We need to step up our game. Downtown Orlando needs to be a great place for business, and any kind of business, from a startup business to a later stage business. This is a picture of Orlando circa 1960. I find this image to be almost unrecognizable. But I got to thinking, in 50 years' time, today's photos of downtown Orlando should be just as unrecognizable as this image is to me. The future of our city is going to be shaped by companies that don't yet exist. Therefore, we need to make it easy for anyone to start a business here. We need to help companies that start become successful. And we need to encourage more people to start up. This is a great map that shows the global centers for innovation and growth. Cities like San Francisco, Boston, London, Tel Aviv, Hyderabad, and Singapore are leading the world in innovation, venture capital, industry. We can aspire to be one of those cities represented by the blue dot, or we can aspire to be a smaller city. It's up to us. From a policy standpoint, the biggest challenge is, how do you create an environment that gives rise to business? Well, the easiest thing that we can do is just make Orlando an awesome place to be. Talent these days selects the city it wants to live in first and then creates career opportunities around their personal choices. Talent is mobile. We want to give talent a reason to choose Orlando. But there are a few policies that can help accelerate our city. This is an example of Chattanooga, Tennessee, where gigabit internet connection is very, very affordable. So in my business at Canvas, we have a gigabit internet service, and it costs us nearly $5,000 a month. If I were in Chattanooga, that same level of connectivity would cost me $70 a month. That's a game changer. A big part of Shanghai's growth story has been the Xinjiang High-Tech Park. It's almost 30 square miles in the city, houses hundreds of thousands of employees, tens of thousands of businesses, and generates billions of dollars in economic output. Hyderabad has one of these as well. If you've done business with a Fortune 100 company, there's a good chance that you've dealt with part of their operations in Hyderabad. The good news is we're building our own version of Xinjiang Tech Park, or the high-tech city, in the form of the Creative Village. And I think it's this context that we need to be thinking about the Creative Village and recognize that it takes decades to build something so transformative, and fully support the vision of the Creative Village. Orlando's home to some great social entrepreneurs, including the folks over at Clean the World. We need to recognize this and capture this as a unique part of our story to lead the country in social entrepreneurship. We need a community-focused meeting venue for all of the startups that are looking for space to get together. This building is actually still standing at the Bob Carr. The Bob Carr put a glass wrapper on the outside of this historic building. We don't have that many great historic landmarks in our community. We should restore the Orlando Municipal Hall. We need to make it easy for anyone to do business in Orlando. This is not actually a slide that I pulled from the city's website, but is representative of the kind of bureaucracy that can just slow business down. We need to look at streamlining all of our policies and regulations to make it easy for anyone to get started here. And as a philosophy, I think the city needs to think about, how do we facilitate new ideas? How do we allow people to try stuff out in the form of tactical urbanism or in the form of innovation in other ways? The fifth big concept was thinking about how do we attract a creator culture to our downtown. The folks that build things with their hands, that make things, bakers, brewers, farmers, woodworkers, artists. We want to attract those kinds of creators into our downtown core. Now, most of these folks in the community are out in our neighborhood districts. Places like Mills 50 and Audubon Park are attracting these folks because it's easy to do business there and rents are cheap. Well, there's parts of town where rents can be just as affordable. And we want to encourage these kinds of people to be thinking about doing their work and living in downtown Orlando. This is a Brazilian street artist who does a lot of work in Miami, Eduardo Cobra. Awesome name. Our city should be commissioning street artists to do big, epic works like this all over our community. One of the towns that we discovered through our research is a town called Paducah, Kentucky, on the Ohio River, the western edge of Kentucky. And it's a riverfront community that had a neglected historic neighborhood. And they created an artist relocation program where any artist in the country could move to Paducah, buy a historic home for $1, as long as they built a studio in that house. And it's transformed that city, it's transformed that community. We should set aside an area downtown and create some incentives to encourage creators to come and work and live in our downtown core. Food is economic development, and this is a great case study of Trinity Groves in Dallas, Texas. This was a former strip mall that was derelict, and 10 or so restaurants came into the area in a concentrated way, and it's completely revitalized this community. Foodies will travel for great food. Downtown Orlando does not have enough great restaurants. This is an example of a food truck park in Austin, Texas. And a lot of municipalities have a hard time with food trucks from a regulatory standpoint or a tax standpoint. But by creating something innovative like this, allowing food trucks to come in and park at a fixed facility creates opportunity to better regulate and generate tax income from food trucks. We need to recognize that food truck operators and the folks that frequent food trucks oftentimes find neighborhoods and help regenerate those neighborhoods. The sixth major theme was creating an iconic visual identity for our community. When you look at this image, I don't need to tell you what city this is. And when you look at this image, I don't need to tell you what city this is. Small things can really activate a skyline, or big things. And this is another interesting example of a city that leveraged some historical assets to activate their skyline. This is Vancouver, British Columbia. And the W stands for Woodward's, which was a former department store that operated in a core part of the city for about 100 years. And it's since gone out of business 20 years ago. And somebody in Vancouver found the W, put it on top of a steel tower and relit it to make it a part of the skyline again. We have glorious nighttime weather, sunsets in this part of the world. We should capture that on our rooftops and provide diversity of activity in our downtown core. We need to scale up our public art. The Sea Art Orlando project was so fantastically successful. People are clamoring for things to look at. Tourists in our downtown core are taking pictures of anything they can find. We should scale up our public art. Great lighting makes the city safer at night, as well as just more energetic and alive. This is an example of Shanghai, fantastic urban lighting. The seventh major theme coming out of DTO was a stellar cultural scene for arts, entertainment, sports, music. This is a photograph actually of a finalist for the Orlando Phil. Conductor Alondra De La Parra is a finalist for the vacated music director position at the Orlando Phil. This is a great case study, again in Vancouver, of a bridge district. This is Granville Island, which sits right below the main bridge connecting the downtown core with the southern neighborhoods. And it's a very vibrant community that used to be Wharf District and is now occupied by farmers markets and antique stores and breweries and cool tech spaces. And under our bridge, the I-4, the ultimate I-4 project, as that rooftop gets raised and extended, we need a permanent destination farmers market in downtown. You can also think about a row of restaurants along that. This is an example from a bridge in Istanbul. Another great benefit to the bridge district is the shade cast by the bridge deck. This is a natural place for us to put sports courts. So Austin's always been a big tech city. It has the University of Texas in its downtown core. It has a number of big tech companies that anchor it. This image is South by Southwest, and I would argue that South by really has catapulted Austin from a good tech town to a world-class tech city. We need a multi-format, multi-day festival in our downtown core as well. This very easily could be a picture of Church Street. The last task force that got together as a part of Project DTO determined the need for a world-class performing arts center. Dr. Phillips Center is opening this November. Couldn't be more proud of what this is going to do for our city to be a part of this process. But we have to recognize that this center is only 2/3 built. We need to see this thing through. We need to complete this project. And as the rest of the venues come online, Amway Center is a world-class MBA facility, the Citrus Bowl newly renovated and opening soon, and now an MLS stadium opening. We need to claim our position in the country as a world-class sports city. And downtown needs a museum, needs a modern art museum. This is an image from Cleveland, Ohio. Cleveland has a better art museum than we do. Cleveland. Good friend of mine runs a tech company here in town, and he thinks that great music begets great tech scenes. It's true. If you think about cities like Seattle and Portland, San Francisco, Austin, Boston, they all have great music scenes. Our music scene locally isn't as strong as it needs to be. One thing we could do is not make busking illegal, and the second is to encourage a busking festival to come here, encouraging local musicians to start performing on the street. This is how you generate musicians that are good enough to go play clubs. We need to make music a part of our scene. Orlando's always been a diverse and open community. As I said earlier, more than half the people that live in Orlando now were not born here. They were born someplace else, some other part of the country, some other part of the world, and have relocated here to pursue opportunity and a better quality of life. As the demographics in the country are changing and shifting, so too are they changing here in Orlando. And we need to recognize that this has always been a part of our story, and it's a key part of our story for the future, that we're an open, accessible community, that hey, a guy like me who's been here 9 years can be vice chair of this task force creating a roadmap for the next 10 years for our city. The ninth theme is that we need to be a city that takes care of our own, that we need a strong social fabric that defines the way that we care for each other, the way that we come together to celebrate with each other, and the way that we play with each other. I love this photo. Just a few days ago in August was the 25th anniversary of this just groundbreaking, peaceful protest in Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia, protesting Soviet rule. 2 million people came together, locked arms across over 670 kilometers. That's the distance from here to Atlanta. It's incredible. It's one of the most remarkable forms of peaceful protest in the last 100 years. Imagine what we could accomplish if we came together with a singular purpose. We could solve homelessness. This is well within our grasp to solve if we as a community decided that it was a big enough priority for us to solve. We certainly want to support the service agencies that are tackling homelessness in its many forms, from chronic homelessness to episodic homelessness to family homelessness and so on. But we certainly want to support the efforts that all of these service agencies are doing. At the same time, we need to recognize the challenge that aggressive forms of panhandling have on downtown retail. And it absolutely needs to be addressed. It needs to be addressed with a police force that's highly sensitive and trained in crisis intervention training. We need a police force 100% certified in crisis intervention training. Access to diverse and affordable homes is an important part of our downtown community. And lots of people in our community want to find opportunities for service, and there's certainly many organizations that could use volunteerism from our community. We should establish one great week where we all come together and provide service for organizations that need our help. And we want to see our faith-based community coming together to strengthen our social fabric. We need to convene an interfaith leaders group in downtown Orlando. 2 recent planning efforts, the Paramore Comprehensive Neighborhood Plan and Central Florida's Partnerships Values Study, both identified neighborhood safety as a key area of need. And we certainly want to support and enhance our community policing efforts around our neighborhoods and our downtown. The final theme that came out of Project DTO was a city built for the future, a sustainable city. Environmental quality, economic health, and social equity are all mutually dependent concepts. We need to invest in this area of our urban life as OUC has done with the first solar farm in Central Florida. Green roofs is a no-brainer, and the Growing Orlando initiative is looking to build a commercial-sized farm spread across multiple rooftops and downtown plots in our downtown core. It's a fantastic concept. It should be supported. We need to support urban agriculture and locally sourced food. This is a great example from Portland's Green Streets initiative, where they recognize that stormwater management systems can be treated as an urban amenity. And here, water is diverted off of the street into a little culvert. It's actually very pretty and is supporting some plants and trees and whatnot. We need to look at opportunities for stormwater management in our downtown while making those things amenities. San Francisco has an incredibly bold initiative where they're going to eliminate all forms of landfill and incinerated waste by 2020. It's a staggering vision. But anywhere you go in the city, small measures are identifiable, where every garbage can is co-located with a recycling can and with a composting can. We need to attack our waste management with equal zeal. The 75 people in the task force for Project DTO spent countless hours, thousands and thousands of hours, researching, debating, discussing, and finally documenting 10 major themes for the city of our future. I have one final slide. I love this image for two things. Number one, this is a young person who feels the need to defend the city that she loves. And I love that the young people in our community who could live really anywhere feel that Orlando is an awesome place to live and it needs to be defended. The second part of this is that Orlando doesn't suck is not really a positive brand for our community. It's great to see that this group of passionate people are supporting our city, but ultimately, one of the deliverables that comes out of Project DTO is a comprehensive branding strategy. That work is ongoing and will be informed by the findings of need that I've just summarized and the next deliverables coming through Project DTO, which includes a vision plan, the CRA's new plan, and a branding strategy guide. Thank you very much for watching. It's been my pleasure to report on the summary of the findings of need for Project DTO. For more information, you can hit the websites below. Thanks very much.